Okay, recording. Here's the first things we want to do today as we get started. Just remember that I failed you. You couldn't log in last time. What I found out is that when you make a user, it doesn't give them any login privileges. It just makes a user. I had to actually go and give that user login and read-only privileges. So I'm going to go log in as that user. I didn't give you the user. The user is cs230, and the password is cs230 sp2020 exclamation point.
Does this have to be a certain on a certain browser?
Oh yes, yes, Firefox. It does not like Chrome. I don't know. I do not know why it doesn't like Chrome, but it does not like it. Just you try to log in and it just burps. You can browse from anywhere, actually. You're welcome to. We will be installing a virtual machine, so you do have lots of memory, like 16 gig, and your virtual machine isn't going to take up a lot of CPU time, except during the install, but you do have a fast CPU. You could try it from the virtual machine, or only if you want fastest virtual machines, you run them one at a time. So now that let's make sure that you can log in now. Log in as cs230. cs230 sp2020 exclamation point. Now you have read-only privileges in those machines. This is something you want to get to know well. This is the professional version of virtualization. This is ESXi. VMware Workstation Player is the junior version. And knowing the Workstation Player gets you some experience, but understanding and learning what the VMware ESXi does for you and just being familiar with it and all the things you can do in there, at this point you can view many things. Notice in the licensing we do have and you can get this, an educational license, and basically look at the expiration date. Never expires. Pretty nice.
Pretty awesome.
But it is not legal if I were actually running the firewall for the school off of ESXi. We're doing educational VMs. Your VMs are just for you to learn how to do it. If we're doing something supporting the entire school, we would want to get an actual pro license or pay an official education infrastructure license. They're pretty nice about giving you education license. So just browsing through the various pieces there on the VMware ESXi. This address is what takes me to the ESXi running on the Blade server.
What username and password were you using?
Username cs230, password cs230 sp2020 exclamation point. No capitals. No capitals, no spaces.
Did Derek log in too?
He's watching.
Okay.
His name's Derek?
Yes, Derek.
Oh, hi, Derek.
Derek was kidding.
Hey, Derek.
He's auditing this class. He's going to keep it out multiple times this year.
Now this user I'm going to leave on there. Anytime you feel like exploring ESXi, you can come, log in, and just get familiar with what's available there. Let's see if the read-only, I think it'll let you see the settings. Oh, it doesn't let you see. I'm not sure why it doesn't let you see anything in there. Let's see if it just wants me to log in again. Let's see this.
Whoa. What's all lines on monitor?
Oh, it doesn't let me. It doesn't let me view that one for some reason. I'm not sure why. So you may have. Looks like you have limited capabilities on seeing everything. That one I can see. Oh, maybe because it wants. If I click on that, it wants to bring up the console, and that's sort of protected. Let's see what it lets you see. Yeah, it lets you kind of browse through all the capabilities on the system. Let's see if it lets you monitor what is being. Let's see what we have. If we click on virtual machines, I see how many do I have running? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Nothing's terribly busy. This AD server is probably the busiest one. That's our Active Directory server. That's a Windows machine. Let's just see if I click on that. Oh, it can't. It doesn't let me in there. Let's see if I click on monitor what I can see here. Let's look at performance. Do I have any graphs? Let's see.
know, to get to the monitor thing?
Up here, underneath the host. If you expand the host,
Okay. Up there.
yeah. I thought you would be able to see a graph. Let's see. I'm not getting a graph on mine. Are you seeing a graph? Oh, cool.
Make me color. Look at this graph.
Maybe. Oh. No.
Am I in the monitor settings? Oh yeah, when I go to monitor, I get a graph. Who am I? Oh, I'm Jacob. That is very annoying.
How come you're getting graphs and I'm not? What's going on? Are you on host monitor? Performance?
Weird.
Why are you seeing a graph and I'm not? I don't understand.
Are you on
Oh, my graph was minimized. Okay. I had that little tiny handle. I just guessed. Maybe there's something hiding behind that handle. Okay, there's the graph. And we're seeing, I guess, there's a decent amount of CPU time being used, and you can hover over particular times. Look at all those CPUs. One of them is the busiest, number 26. Looks like 26 is doing all the work. And I don't know how they determine what CPU gets what, how busy they get. And how many are there? 32 CPUs, 0 to 31. Learn a lot just by browsing through it. And you're safe because you don't have any write privileges. The wonderful thing about being restricted privileges, if something goes wrong, they can't come to you. And I recommend, if you're doing this, do not have one root for everybody. I judiciously do that for myself. I make an AT Manning login, and I only use that in case Mr. Newland notices something. He can look and see, yes, I did do something. Because it's likely that if I'm doing a lot of work, something I do is going to affect somebody else, and I want them to know and not guess if it was me. Yep.
And where are all of these CPU cores coming from? Is it your computer specifically?
No, this is actually running on a Blade server down in the rack downstairs in the lab. ESXi is a type 1 hypervisor, which we have several of running downstairs in the lab. So, and those that are doing the server management course, I'm assuming you're going to have one of those to work and actually be managing your own ESXi system. And some of them are very noisy. Is that one running right now?
Nope.
Okay. You'll know when they're running, and that's why you typically put them in a server room, climate controlled, securely locked, because one virtual server is going to be running a lot of machines that are running critical applications. So this gives you a window into that. Now you can experience ESXi. But that's just an aside, and we're going to come back to this occasionally. I'm going to close that now because the main task we're going to do, as we do the install, we're going to talk about what Windows 7 has for us, and let's take a look at what I'm asking you to do on Schoology.
Schoology.
Bring my Schoology window over here. Underneath the assignments, there is one Chapter 4 assignment. Remember, the Chapter 3 assignments are all due tonight. So if you hadn't got working on them by now, you might be ruining your Winterfest times. It's up to you to plan ahead for those things. I've given you one Chapter 4 assignment, and so I'm going to open that and discuss what needs to go in there, and then we'll get busy on it. Well, how about this? We got something that's going to take a while. Let's start that, and then we'll come back and talk about what needs to go in here. But think about what you're doing. We're going to do a Windows 7 install and document what we're doing. So that's your assignment. You're going to be using a professional report template in Word. One of the big things you need to learn, besides all the technology, is how to tell other people about your technology and what you're doing. And learning to do professional writing is super important. Even if you don't know the technology, you can look like you're smart if you have reports that look nice.
I don't have Microsoft Word.
Oh, then use Google Docs and download it as Microsoft Word. Are you happy to use Google Docs? And they have templates there too.
Really don't like Google Docs.
Then we can get Microsoft installed on that machine. I thought it was.
It should be on by default.
All right. Well, let's make sure we'll get it on that for you.
Okay.
You can if you want. Well, you could install it on your VM there, but we'll get it installed on your desktop. I forgot that you had that problem last fall, the crash. We had a crash and had to. Okay. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. So the first thing we do in order to get this going is we need to mount, in Windows we call that mapping a network drive, this path. I'm going to copy that and show you what I mean by mapping a network drive and why I like mapping rather than simply browsing to it. I'm going to bring up the File Explorer. I could just put that address right here in my address bar. But the problem is, if I ever want to disconnect, it's really hard to get Windows to disconnect shares. It's a little more complicated. I'd rather map it as a network drive and have it appear down here, and I can connect or disconnect. So I'm going to do the map network drive thing. Even though I have it mapped, I'll show you how the map network drive would work. I right-click on this PC, map network drive. Then in that folder, that's where I put the address of that share, in the folder that I want to map. This allows me to save my credentials if I'm logging in as a different user, like a public user or a guest user. I can check connect using different credentials. I have that share set up dangerous and insecure, allowing you to map without you even having a login there. I had to actually convince Windows to let me share it. Remember how last time you weren't able to see that without me coming in and giving you login? Now it should let you in without any credentials. Now I click Finish. After putting that folder there, the drive letter doesn't matter. You want to give it X or some other available drive letter, you're welcome. It's picking the next available one, and I click Finish. If you like that, yes, you're welcome to do that. Yep. Now, notice I have that same drive mounted or mapped to two different drive letters. And I really don't need them both. If I don't need one, I can right-click on one, disconnect. And it's a good idea if you have red X's to different drives that you were connected to and they're not connecting now. Your computer is actually regularly trying to talk to them. And it's sometimes you'll find out things get really slow if you have a lot of disconnected drives. So if you don't need it, you can right-click disconnect them just so they're not getting in your way, timing out. I have noticed significant slowdowns, and I finally disconnect drives that I didn't need anymore, and suddenly the Windows Explorer didn't take so long when I started it. So I'm disconnecting any drives. Notice it's still showing them here, but if I disconnect and then do a refresh, F5 does a refresh, or I can do a view. Is there a view refresh? Sometimes that view refresh is not easy to find. I'll do a F5, and there some of them had disappeared that I don't need mapped anymore. I'm going to force them to be disconnected. Right-click, disconnect, and then F5. Yep, and it finally goes away. Yes?
Can I see which one we're supposed to choose? It just loaded
this guy right here.
The 172 to 16 for me.
You can map the network drive, or did you?
Just got me there.
Yep. That's all you need to do. Let me just show you doing it. All you do is map network drive and put that in there. Whatever drive letter comes up, you can leave that in there. I'm just disconnecting old map drives that I don't need to connect to anymore. And they're slowing me down. And now I hit a F5 to refresh. There we go. This is the best condition. Not have any drives that are failing to connect. If they're failing to connect, your PC gets slowed down. Yes, sir. Actually, this IP address right here, because I've set up the machines, I know that this is this PC right here. It could just as well be a server, but I have shared a file from here, and I've named the share name download $. And you're gonna learn how to do all this yourself as well as we get into Windows 10. We don't want to do much with Windows 7. We just want to start a fresh install and go through the procedure.
Okay, so instead of downloading it, I just connect it to your drive.
Yeah.
Grab it.
And you can grab it and drag it over. You could even, as we create our VM, you can even refer to the ISO as we create the VM, which we're going to do right now. Now we want to create it. And basically we're going through the installation of Windows 7. I could walk you through the PowerPoint that talks about installing Windows 7, but what fun would that be? If you can do it yourself, you're going to be much better at all this and remembering this. So, here in VMware Workstation 15, or if you so desire, like Jonah, I think you're trying, are you going to do VirtualBox? If you so desire, okay, you can, if you so desire, you can use VirtualBox. I recommend you learning VirtualBox, but first make sure you have a good handle on using VMware, because that's the one already installed. They're not radically different, but they are different enough that I'd rather you be comfortable with VMware first. I don't want you to be bored though. If you know VMware, learn VirtualBox. So I'm going to go with the VMware. Now it's time to create a new virtual machine. If you have any running, I would recommend, do you shut them off from here? If they're running over here, do you shut them off here? No. You go into the VM and do a shutdown from inside the VM if you have any running. Otherwise, it's just like you unplug the poor machine and it may not be happy the next time. Usually it's okay, but occasionally you have crazy things happen and you actually can break a system by just shutting off the power. Suspending it's okay. Yeah. You can suspend. That's pretty safe. The problem with suspend is if you ever decide, oh yeah, I suspended that last year, I want to clone it or copy it, you cannot clone it or do anything with it until you've powered it up and done a shutdown. It won't give you a clean clone until it's done a clean shutdown. So suspend is like, you can do a quick restart, but you can't do much with it until you've done a full hard soft shutdown. So now that I'm checking, I don't have any running. Now I'm going to do player, file, new virtual machine. I'm going to go with the setting. I'm going to install the operating system later, and then we'll go through how to set our image file to point to that map network drive. Click Next. We are going with Microsoft Windows and Microsoft Windows 7 64-bit version. Yes, sir?
Oh, like this the ISO category? Or you had something in the ISO?
Oh, yeah. I am going to install this operating system later. Don't worry about, this is an ISO I used on some other install. It remembers.
Okay.
It kind of remembers previous ISOs. And that's right, I think it remembers my previous choices. It may have actually had an installer disk choice for you. So I choose the third one. Going to do Windows 764. It's remembering my last choice. And let's pause right here. What does it mean by 64-bit or 32-bit? What's that all about?
It's the binary count, like the maximum per bus. So with the bus of a processor, if it's 64-bit architecture, it can have 64 binary digits.
Yeah.
Versus 32, which allows for more numbers being processed.
It's called the address space. 64-bit, think of that as 64 wires coming out of the CPU that allow you to turn on ones or zeros. You have 2 to the 64th possible addresses on 64 wires. 2 to the 32 is the number you could go up to if you have 32 wires. That's 32-bit. Remember, a bit can be 0 or 1. So 2 to the 32nd is 4 billion something, 4 gigabytes. If you wanted to see it exactly, let's look at the calculator and get that exact number. Where's my little calculator? I can go to online calculator. And I didn't like this one. I like this one better. Let's do, oh, I have to, how was that? That's not giving me a scientific calculator. Or is it? I want 2 to the, there we go. A to the B. 2, A to the 32, enter, 4.2 times 10 to the 9th. That's 4 gig. 4,249,967 million, something like that. 294,967,000. That is what 4 gig is. 2 to the 64th. That's a very large number. That's 2 to the 24th terabytes. A lot of addressable space, way beyond what we can even manufacture for one CPU to access. So typically they say, you know, you have unlimited memory space if you had that much available in addressing 64 bits. It also affects how much storage, because addressing disk space also has to do with how large a number I can count up to, which has to do with how much what size of number I can store in that 2 to the 64th locations of memory. So 64 bits not only affects how much you can address out in memory, 2 to the 64th locations, but also the standard size of a byte of a memory location that I can bring into my CPU is also 2 to the 64th bits. So I can process big numbers and put them in big memory space. That's the essentials. That's what the difference between 32 and 64-bit is. All newer versions of operating systems are just, you can essentially assume they're 64-bit. I don't know when 128-bit is going to come along, but there'll be a day where you'll be saying, yeah, kids, it used to be 64-bit, used to be really big. Give it a name. This is your login, so you can choose whatever name. And a very, very, very important thing, do not store it on your C drive. Store it on your extra data drive, because we're going to be using up some space here. Every virtual machine, when it's running, it's using memory space. When you have created it, it reserves a large chunk of disk space, especially as you use it and start installing software. So choose that letter. What I typically do is I just change that letter name to what I know is my data drive, and I let it use the entire path the rest of the way. I'm just going to make sure that that guy is there. Pretty sure he is. Let's just browse to make sure. Browse over. Yep, it's there. No, it isn't. If you don't have, so make sure, if you don't have an extra data drive, just be carefully put it in your documents folder or somewhere. But most everyone has an extra disk. Even better, if you want to use this and plan to use your VM in the future, an external USB drive is what I use. And you can actually get 120 gig SSD for about 20 bucks. For about $10, you can get a good USB to SATA cable, and you can carry that virtual machine with you. And it can be a decent virtual machine because we have USB 3 connections to it. You can actually run your VM from any PC that has VMware, same version installed on it. You can simply have this location be pointing to your external drive.
They also have M.2 to USB.
Yeah. Whatever connection, the fastest connection that you have on your system and fastest cable will give you a faster VM.
Yes, they have now like little, you make like your own USB thumb drive and an M.2 drive.
Yeah.
Like, that'd be kind of cool to get like virtual machines on that.
What I love on my laptop, I have a tiny, half-an-inch long, 128 gig Samsung USB flash drive. It runs cooler than any other flash drive I've used, and I run Ubuntu off it full time as an alternative to Windows, and it has not heated up. Have not had problems with it.
No, that's cool.
And it's really nice, tiny little drive. You can hardly tell it's there. It's like the almost little wireless mouse kind of connection. 128 gig, which is a decent space for Ubuntu to be running on. But I also give it access to all my files on my Windows system. Okay, so pick where you have it on a different drive, and I'm going to call this, since I already have a drive, I'm going to go back and give this guy a different name. I'm going to call it 764-2 because I already just made one just to making sure this will all work. Let me give it a right name. 2, and it should make a, oh look at it, didn't decide to make a drive of the same name. I'm going to make the drive have the same name. Make that directory have the same name will keep you from going insane. Okay, we are going to give it some more than a little hefty amount of drive space. We are going to store it as a single file. I find it's just easier to deal with, deleting it or moving it around when it's a single file. And I want the best, actually I want the best performance. This says multiple files. They claim it's easier to move, but you may not have the greatest performance. We're not going to be doing a ton with it, so we don't care about the performance, but I'm just going to store mine as a single file. It will keep them in that same location. Do you know how much space Windows 7 needs?
14 gigs. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a smaller amount. I found that a typical install with the software, I find about 32 gigs. I like to powers up to 30 gigs is probably plenty. I'm installing 60 because I want to, and when we're doing the install, we want to do something special with that. So we're going to do a 60 gig.
I don't have the disk space for that, so is that okay? 20 gigabytes is the minimum.
Well, I'll show you something. If you make it a dynamic disk,
Like, I mean, on my main system. Like,
yeah, on VMware, I think he actually doesn't use that disk space up immediately. It looks to the VM as though he has that much space, but he actually doesn't use it until your VM is actually storing that much data. We call it a dynamic. They grow dynamically. They only grow to the virtual machine. It looks like it's a 60 gig drive.
How does the VM handle that though when it says it doesn't have any room left, but it says it has room left, but it doesn't have room left?
VMware does that. It tells the virtual machine, oh, there's 60 gig out there. And when the virtual machine tries to write to something, fill the disk up to 60 gig, it'll actually use up that much space in the virtual disk drive file. So the virtual disk drive file is what's actually, it actually has of real data.
But I mean, if you physically don't have the space for it.
Then the VM will actually, your disk drive will actually fill up. And your operating system will say, oh, I've got problems.
And but the VM OS doesn't know what's going on.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, the VM thinks it has 60 gig left, and really the virtual disk isn't able to expand to what it thinks it should be able to expand to.
Just download more storage space.
Now, in VirtualBox, and let's see, I thought they would give you the option here. Let me see. I guess let's check our settings here. Now that we've created it, before I start it up, oh look at that, 2 gig. Let's give it a little more memory before we start up. Let's go edit our virtual machine settings. So keep track of what you're doing here, either with handwritten notes or in a separate little document, because this is part of the install of your basic setup of the VMware. And you can always come back later and redo it, because it's not that hard.
Virtual machine more RAM than my computer has.
It'll say unavailable. When you go, let's do that. Let's go to edit virtual machine settings before we start it up. And let's say, wait a minute, I want more memory.
Is it just gonna I was literally just like go and do a bunch of page files and really big page files.
No, it'll refuse to give you anything bigger.
So, yeah.
Even though, well, it didn't complain. I thought it would complain. I know VirtualBox doesn't let you go past the existing memory in the system.
I think this one will just resort to page files.
Maybe, yeah. And of course, the performance will drop horrendously.
Joey has an experiment with those computers where we had like increasing RAM for each computer and core count, and then we got to see the like diminishing return.
Okay. Well, I would recommend, just for give you practice, 4 gig. I would say let's see how well it performs with 4 gig. We know I know my machine has at least 16, so I'm not using more. I would recommend never use more than half of the memory you have in your running VMs, just so your poor host machine just doesn't start crawling. So I'm bumping it up. And one more thing we're going to do here. Let's check our hard disk. Let's see here if I can go to the hard disk settings here. I can tell it what kind of drive. I'm going to leave that alone. I thought I could tell it whether it was a dynamic or reserve that much space on my system. I guess with VMware it doesn't let me choose. Under VirtualBox, you can tell the system expand to what you need. Maybe the default in VMware is just expand as you need it. Maybe it only allows the dynamic disk. Yes?
So on my machine, I don't have a hard disk option. It just is not there. I have everything else. Do I need that?
Yet your system will need a hard drive.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, so between processors and SATA.
Okay, well then do a add. You can always add another hard disk. And then it'll ask you how large to make it. Yeah.
Did we go past the choosing the number of processors? Processor cores?
I just left that the default of 1.
Okay.
If you already have a disk, you don't need to change that. Let's just check the processors. You can modify the number of cores if you'd like. Just to experiment. Yes, William.
In add hardware, I don't have a storage thing.
Same. I don't have an option.
Underneath hard disks, you don't have add hard disk?
Nope.
The word hard and disk are not
No kidding. Okay, go back to where did you tell it? Let's go back a little bit. Let's check our settings. Is your disk file there in a valid place? If I right-click on my machine, settings, let's take a look here. So what do you think? Where's your VM? You haven't made a new VM. Oh, you haven't done that. You haven't done that. Which VM are you looking for?
I think you do it before you fully.
Oh.
Where's
your...
I had it open before
Oh, you didn't do the finish. Oh, okay. Oh, okay.
I didn't know that.
Oh, did you finish?
Yeah, there we go. Now, right.
Oh, you press it?
Just finish
Oh,
it, and then
okay.
you just win this all in post. So then you just go back and fix it.
There you go. Yeah. It doesn't actually create that drive until you click finish. Yeah, okay. I had noticed that. Okay, now that's all just the preparation of your VM. Now we're going to do the Windows install. So, how do we do that? How does it know what to install? How would you do it on a normal PC? Yeah. Or what would I give you to install?
The floppy drive.
A floppy drive, a DVD,
USB flash drive.
or a flash drive.
Okay, plug in the 18 floppy disks.
So we need a virtual CD. So we go on our CD DVD there, and instead of using the physical drive of our machine, we are going to use an ISO image file of a DVD on your CD DVD. And here, make sure we click Connected Power On and browse to that drive that you mapped at the start of class. And look at there, there's a Windows 10, not a Windows 10, under cs230. Where's my Windows 7 ISO? Oh, under virtualization, there it is, Windows 7. That's the ISO. Yeah, under virtualization. I meant to put the other one in virtualization too. Try to be organized. Okay, now what's going to happen is he's going to pretend that that's a DVD. This operating system, when we power up, he's going to say, hey, there's a DVD in there, but the virtual machine, the hypervisor, knows it's a virtual DVD, but that virtual machine doesn't know that. Now we are ready to power on, and this is what you would see. Just click Play Machine, and this is what it'll see as though we're booting up from hardware.
I forgot about the Windows 7 boot screen. That's so long. Nostalgia.
Yeah.
What was the map? What was the map location? So right click on this PC, map network drive. Right click, map network. Two backslashes. 172. Backslash.
Yeah, my parents had one computer with Vista and of course
want to copy it to your machine, you can go into virtualization, copy it over, and drag that Windows 7 ISO. Yeah, drag that to your. Copy paste it. You copy paste it to your documents or your wherever you want. It's a pretty fast network, so. Then your VM. Now we're booting Windows 7. This will be a good time to take a little screenshot of each section you go through because this is the installation. Now, let's see. The magnifier may mess up the recording, but I'm going to magnify this for you. Yeah.
If I'm going to put this into a Word document, I'm going to need to get a Word document.
Start up WordPad at this point. That'll let you save screenshots. So I'm going to start my magnifier. And sorry if the recording gets messed up. I've seen the magnifier sometimes mess up my recording. I'm going to zoom in on that. Okay, so here's our install. Defaults are pretty nice. Notice when I click on here, it's going to give you a little message. I'm capturing, oh, it didn't give me the message. It's capturing your mouse at this point. Remember, now you are captured. Control-Alt will disconnect you from that machine. Going to do the install now. But don't go the defaults yet. Question, John?
Yeah, so I was at the install now page, and I was like, gosh, it's even a screenshot of the page before.
Now, you're going to get there's a little message popping up at the bottom about installing VMware Tools. We will want to install them, but there's not an operating system to install them to yet. So we don't want to install them. We're going to do that later. You can click Remind Me Later or Never Remind Me, and we'll do that manually. Okay, so here's the startup. Yes.
Where does one acquire ISOs?
With
I for my own.
but you can go to you can actually go online to Microsoft provides them downloadable.
Okay.
Often, well, sometimes they'll send you you can actually create an ISO. They give you a tool to create the ISO. There is a version of Windows 7 that you can download. You need a product key before it'll let you download. And so rather than try to get the product key, we had one here that we had downloaded from before.
I see.
But yeah, you can get those from Microsoft. Any other operating system, you have an install ISO that you typically get. When we talk about Linux, we have ISOs that can get any version of Linux out there. You can get ISOs of Windows 98, I believe, and actually run them as a VM just to see what Windows 98 looked like. When you get to the page after this, it will give you a choice of how to install it. And I'm not sure why mine is taking so long.
It doesn't like you.
Custom.
We're going to do custom because I want you to not choose the default install to the entire drive because we're going to do some playing with that other partition.
I'm going to create 50 partitions.
We're going to install to the half of it. We're going to install to 30 gigs and leave the other 30 gigs alone. There we go. So I accept the license terms. Now you may notice some strange behavior of the mouse. It's not doing too bad for me. That's one reason we will want to install the VMware Tools. Yes?
Is there a way to go back and do that?
Yeah, just reset your PC from the VMware part and start the install from the CD over again.
Okay.
Okay, so accept the license term, click Next.
Partitioning stuff.
That's what I'm going right now. In Custom,
Mine just came up install Windows.
yeah, we're going to do Install Windows, but then after that it will pop up a page giving you Install or Customize.
So I click install now on the second page.
Yeah, you'll get another page popping up.
Alright, cool.
So by default, here's a page I want you to be familiar with. Remember, this is at the lowest level of the OS. This is where it's deciding where it goes on your drive. So if we just click Next right now, it would choose the default option of it use up the entire drive from my operating system. But I want you to learn about these advanced options here. So click on Advanced Options. And here is where we can decide to create partitions to be used by our operating system, and just instead of letting it choose everything. I want the operating system to only use half of my drive. One good reason for this is I want to have data that's unrelated to my operating system to be able to store on another partition. And in case I ever crash Windows or decide to reinstall Windows, I don't lose that data, because Windows wants to take over one partition, and he'll leave the other one alone if I say, hey, install to this partition. So I'm going to click New here to create a new partition. And I'm going to create one, instead of the entire size of the drive, make that about 30,000. This is something that's also done when you're installing other operating systems. You partition or format the drive for that operating system to be happy with. It isn't telling us details of what type of format is. I could actually decide what kind of format right now. Let's see, if I click Format, no, I'm not going to worry about that. In other operating systems, you can actually tell it various forms of formatting.
So the file stored on the drive can be transferred to another device.
Yep.
So if I wanted to use the drive for both Windows and Mac,
Yep.
if I want to format it.
Yep.
Okay.
Under the Mac, you have like 4 choices. Under Linux, they give you about 100 choices because there's so many different file systems, file formats. Typically, you try to use the fastest or the most secure. Like it's recovering as you format. Yeah.
Saying for me that Windows cannot be installed to this.
Because 2.9 is too small. You can install it. You want to make a larger one than 2.9. So take that one and make a 30 gig one. And now you click make it a 30 gig, 30,000. Yeah. And now you can install it. He makes it 29. That's okay. Now that I've made that partition, now if I just do Next, it will now install Windows to that smaller partition. And this is the part that it will go through. I think this part takes about 10 minutes, and it'll reboot, and you'll have a working Windows 7. And when you start, once it's installed, then it will bring up the initial installation page. Okay, so I'm going to zoom back out here now and go through some of the PowerPoint I have as you wait for that install to complete. So I'm going to bring up my PowerPoint. Where is my PowerPoint? There we go. Recent. Okay, and I'll get rid of the magnifier. So as you go, take a screenshot along the way.
I was accidentally doing the control print screen inside my Windows machine, not exiting out first.
Oh, and so you can't paste it into there. Okay, so Windows 7 is the historical version of Windows, and the important thing to learn is what has changed since Windows 7. What's the important things that we have advantage that we have now in Windows 10?
Metro UI.
Lots of things. But to the user, there aren't a lot of changes. And there's some disadvantages that I've learned along the way. So this chapter is all about doing this installation. So that's what you're doing right now. And then once we have that installed, your job is to simply use some of the features and keep track of what you've done. And we will be installing some software. So I'm going to do a quick check on that, see how we're doing. Oh, look at that. It's already booting up, starting Windows, so I'm getting close.
Mine's not finding it's saying it's not a CD drive or whatever. So it's probably but I see the ISO. I don't know.
Oh, hey Jacob, can you plug my internet?
No, I see the ISO.
That's screwed. I think that's screwed this whole thing up.
Let me cut that out. Oh yeah, and then it just stopped halfway.
It's all better now.
Oh, so you're still in the installation part. So let's see.
Oh, but it feels good.
That's no fun.
Clips
doesn't count.
Yeah.
So pretty proud of me.
I want it.
So you guys tore down here. Still matches in that drive.
Oh yeah.
Red X on it anymore.
I go through editing all my screenshots.
So all this is really nice to make sure. So still in that.
What?
Nice drivers.
We may have found one problem with Windows 7. With Jared's, I can't explain why. You have a newer laptop. I would have thought VMware would have the drivers. It's like VMware doesn't know about the old drivers. So you may know, what version do you have?
I just downloaded the latest.
Okay, so latest version of VMware, 15.
Yeah.
Try the same thing with Windows 10. Maybe we found that with our newer laptops, VMware doesn't play with Windows 7 anymore. Because it's working fine on these, but these are a little older machines, right? Yes, Jacob?
Can you refresh me on what we're supposed to do with the drive options when we're installing Windows? I'm back to that part where
Oh,
you customize.
go to Customize
Yes.
and make a new, don't do the default install, create a new partition. So go to Advanced and create a partition.
Oh, the size is 3,000.
Yeah, 30,000.
Oh, 30,000.
Okay, now I have Windows installed. Let me bring my magnifier back. Where's my magnifier go? I think I closed it. Here's my install. Now you get to choose the username
There we go. This is pretty neat.
and computer name. This magnifier acts weird sometimes. Come on. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to choose a name for my PC. This is the name the PC knows itself as. So I'm going to call this W7 Manual. How about that? And I'm going to put it for cs230. This is our wonderful course we're in. Okay. And I click Next. It's going to go through. What? Cannot be the same as. What's he saying? Oh, I must have already made one. Let's call it B. Since he already has one that name. Let's see if he's happy. Okay. Make up a password that will be your account. And give yourself a clue. It does require some clue. If you don't care about what the clue is, make up a clue. It makes you type something in there. This product key we don't need because we're just doing a demo. I can skip the product key. If you don't install the product key, you have 30 days before Windows will really start nagging you and scare you to think it's not going to work anymore. I have seen systems that have run for a whole semester without entering a product key. I was getting worried after 30 days, but they seem to go okay. Yes?
If you have like a product key for Windows 10, will they let you use it for Windows 7?
No, they're very specific on what the product key will work for. You can try it, and it'll probably say invalid product key. Sometimes they don't even tell you why. Other times they'll say this was a product key for Windows 10. Sorry, it won't work for Windows 7.
So we should not click automatically activate Windows when I'm online? Or what?
Right. Yeah. And if you do it, you can just cancel it. And also, because Windows updates are something that will take time and disk space, I don't want them to do automatically. Something if I were doing a production system, I would have it install the security updates, but everything else, let me do it. That is something that Windows 10 has taken away from you. Windows 10 is forcing updates many times, not giving you the choice that we had back in Windows 7.
I don't like not having choice.
Did you say the
ask me later. Yep. And because if we ever do get updates, they will not work if our time zone is not set correctly. I don't know why exactly, but in part of getting updates, it checks your clock, and if your clock is weird to it, it will not send you the updates if you're in the wrong time zone or have your date and time set wrong. Although we're not planning to do a bunch of updates, that's something important to do at the start. Under Windows 10, it installs and defaults to specific time. You have to remember to go set your clock to the right time zone under Windows 10.
You said ask me later.
Yeah, for the updates. Now, in the network settings, I've gone with the default, which I believe is a NAT network. We can always change that in the VirtualBox player. I'm going to choose the middle one. I trust everyone, but maybe not as much as I trust at home. So I'm going to choose Work Network. And now it's firing up my system, and I can demagnify.
It's taking a long time. Okay. Just 'cause
I lost my magnifier. Where'd my magnifier go?
I had to restart mine too.
Where'd my magnifier go?
This close getting installed.
Is that it? I can't find my magnifier.
You hit
No.
Alt F4 or something. I thought you clicked your keyboard.
Is there a shortcut key for the magnifier to demagnify? Magnifier.
No, I didn't know it's
It would be so lucrative.
so I should
Bad guy, you
See, the thing is, I went from like
I lost my magnifier.
Mr. Manning?
Yep.
Why does Windows care so much about if we have a product key for Windows 7? It's like, who really wants to use Windows 7 except for old people?
Just because they want to protect. It's just default in there. When it first came out, it set up the protection. It's not worth their time to go turn that off
Yeah.
for the old people.
The old people love Windows 7 though.
I lost my magnifier. I can't demagnify. Look, I'm looking for it.
how do you access?
Where's my start button?
Show me the magnifier.
Is there an escape button?
I tried.
Oh no.
Maybe there's a control
He's
minus.
gonna be watching, like, what is going on?
Yeah. Hey,
Or
oh,
he's gonna think you're on drugs. He's like, what did you guys do in class?
yeah.
You like to know.
Windows escape.
Windows escape. Thank you. Let's see. Hey! Way to go, William. Oh, if I had a candy bar for you, William, I'll give you one later. Thanks, William. Okay. So now we have Windows 7. Now the first thing we want to do, before doing anything else, because we don't want Windows to behave badly for us, first two steps after this is get the virtual machine tools installed. So go to Player, Manage, Install VMware Tools. What this is extra little software that will make your virtual machine play nicely with the host hypervisor. Happens with VirtualBox as well. There's VirtualBox extensions, they call them. What this allows you to do is things like dragging a file from your main Windows to your virtual machine, copying, pasting directly into your virtual machine user interface. Nice sharing files with your host. Those are nice things to have. When you do the install VMware Tools, it basically installs it's as though you installed a CD install. And we're going to go ahead and do the run setup.
It requires administrative.
To do the VMware Tools?
Yeah.
Oh, that's right, because it's tweaking VMware on this side too. I thought you wouldn't need that. All right. Well, I'll give you that permission.
Yay, hip hip hooray.
Didn't realize you need that. So you're doing install VMware Tools? Okay. I thought it was only modifying the client. So this tells us that the tools do something to the host as well. I did not realize, because I'm an administrator, I never said this.
User recommended settings.
Yeah.
You know, you should just make this edit, then we won't have to deal with these.
Well, Mr. Elliott and I are talking about that. I think we'd like to give you a in at least on your machine. So on each, as long as we figure out who sits where, we can get you admin.
I sit here.
I sit where Gustav sits.
You have yours.
I sit everywhere.
Is it asking for admin yet?
Yeah.
Once it's running, you want to install the VMware Tools.
Oh, at home.
Wait, did you want to?
We want to install the VMware Tools that are install tools there or from the menu.
Set up 64.
Yeah, use the default settings. Do you need admin login yet when you do that?
For what?
For the install the VMware Tools is the first thing you want to do after you install Windows. You can do it from the player menu or from the little yellow bar across the bottom.
Oh, I see. Why does mine take so long to install?
So what the VMware Tools are doing again, it's giving you better interface to the actual mouse. Some systems I've seen when we do this, without the VMware Tools, you move the mouse and it's like a second delay for the actual mouse to move in your VM. It's working pretty good on these, but I've had horrendous things. You could hardly see the screen half the time. You click and you think the mouse was somewhere else. And finally, you get the VMware Tools installed, and then the virtual machine will actually behave like a normal machine.
Okay, is this it?
So that's the VM installing it, but it also talks to the host. And at some point, the host is making some change. I'm not sure exactly what. I would expect the host to have all the changes up. Because this machine, the host, needs some change for some reason, which I was not expecting. Yeah. Oh, well, we're gonna do that. Okay. They're still there. So you get it. All right. Now, after we install, what's the next thing we want to do? Think about the next thing after we do the VMware Tools.
Install Chrome.
That is the most important thing is Chrome.
What do we want to install next?
Firefox.
Nope. We're going to install whatever browser. Yep. What's the next most important thing on your computer?
Antivirus.
Bing, bing, bing. Candy bar for you.
Especially with Windows 7.
Especially with Windows 7.
Yeah.
With Windows 10, it's not such a big deal.
Yeah, Windows Defender, but
Windows Defender has been improved quite a bit. Microsoft probably building that into the price of Windows 10 because they got to make money off building antivirus. Yeah.
Typical complete or custom VM.
Typical. I always go typical unless there's a good reason.
Almost pitched up.
And it'll be asking for admin privilege in a second. So, you get to pick the antivirus. I'm letting you decide.
we're doing it fast for free.
This is your machine.
Well, I don't want to spend money on it.
Yes, I would go with something free. What free options are there out there?
A fast.
Fast, AVG, Malwarebytes.
Malwarebytes is paid if you actually want to hack the antivirus though.
But yeah, I like
Super antivirus free.
I like Clam AV only because it was built open source and it's also available in Linux. What do we use in the systems here? Mr. Newland is working with FortiGate. That's one reason I did the Fortinet firewall. He has a FortiGate antivirus. It's a little harder to find. I would recommend Avast, AVG, or Clam AV.
Okay, so I finally talked to you guys.
You installed the Vmware Tools.
How do I? Oh, almost. Sorry.
Okay.
How do I do that? Do I need to
Player. It's in the player menu.
Well, we're gonna run VMs inside of it.
Manage.
Oh, but yeah. Yes.
And just wait a little bit.
Makes it feel
The
like
virtual CD will get installed, and then the balloon will pop up and say, "Hey, do you want to install whatever?"
Okay, is that gonna also help me?
Yeah, that's right. The desktop will behave better too when you
Yeah.
expand it. That's another thing VMware Tools does is when you expand the window. I think it will expand the desktop for you. Otherwise, you're stuck with a fixed size window.
Mobile Molly. 3434.
Okay, so you have to use the only browser that you have is Internet Explorer. So in case you have trouble getting to the antivirus that you choose, you may actually have to install a browser first that will actually cooperate with you. You may go to a site, they'll say that your browser's too old, go away. I've seen that happen. You can't even download anything without having an up-to-date browser. So, well, you may be right. You may have to get Firefox first before you can even get antivirus.
Yeah, it wasn't letting me do anything in this before.
Okay.
I didn't work
Chrome. And that's another thing. With Windows 10, they're pushing Edge or your browser. You look at the browser statistics, Edge is way down, slowly fading away in popularity.
Edge is actually now Chromium based. They recently rolled out the next version. They based it now in Chromium so that it can use extensions.
Oh. They're fighting their way back. We'll see. I don't think it's going to ever be accepted. Just because
They force it too much.
yeah, you're becoming their slave whenever you use their software. Yeah. Typical. Everything typical. Yeah.
Sweet, Chrome's installed.
And in your documentation, if you're doing something like Vmware Tools and you just chose all the typical settings, you don't have to do a screenshot of every page. Just say, this version of Tools, all typical settings. You don't have to go one by one on the page.
Okay.
If you ever go away from typical for some reason, say everything typical except this particular page that I chose this other option. Okay. Then you have your VM, and I'm going to go ahead and find the browser. I'm going to go get Chrome. I don't like Firefox. Google Chrome. Oh, no, I don't want to. If you ever do this on a server, the first time you visit, try to download anything, you get 1,000 security message until you finally get to the place. And then you get the install, and I never then come back. I close Edge, and I never come back to it. But on a server, they have to be super careful about what you install. And I always check, do not report usage statistics. I just don't trust them with my statistics. That's something that when I was reading about differences between Windows 10 and 7, that was a big deal for one user. And let me show you that link I gave you here over in Schoology. Where did that link go? My Schoology link. Yeah, I'll skip out of that.
I've used Windows 7 so long.
Over here in Schoology, underneath this course, there's a resources folder. Oh, I thought I moved it up. In there, some comments about Windows 7 and 10 differences. This guy is not terribly happy with Windows 10. Windows 10 includes numerous forms of spying, telemetry, and advertising, and Microsoft has a bunch of business relationships with other companies with whom they share the data they collect. They imply they only collect data that's not personally identifiable. However, this is very far from the truth. This is a skeptic. We're basically saying we're stuck with Windows 10, but Microsoft is stealing your information to sell it to third parties. That's how they make their money. Even their smart screen checking sites to protect you. This guy's saying, well, they're also collecting every site you visit so they can market to you. Another guy kind of makes some other comparisons between 10 and 7. And some things you'll find compared to 7. So that's just resources for you to look through. Just if everyone asks you, well, what was so bad about Windows 7? Why do we have Windows 10?
Security.
Yeah.
Security.
The 64-bit deal, there were flaws in Windows 7, but they wanted to bring you a lot more features to your life. And now I'm starting with Chrome. So now I have Chrome. Well, Chrome has started. Now what I'll do is typically go back to Windows Explorer, close it, and now I have Chrome to go get the rest of my software. But I have to get the antivirus. So I'm going to search for. I think we're out of time. Oh, we got just a few minutes. I'm going to search for, I'm going to go get ClamAV, because I just like ClamAV.
Can I get whatever I want?
Yes, you can get whatever you want.
Really?
Once you install your antivirus, you want to do one more thing. You want to take a snapshot of your machine. Because having a machine ready to go with antivirus is where you'd want to start if you ever had a fresh machine. So let's see if I can get a, I've got downloads that I don't think I can even unzip. I have to actually install an extractor, I think, to use this one.
I get that the Windows Start thing wasn't part of Windows 7.
Let's see if this will let me. I don't think it knows what to do with that file. I have to get an extractor just to handle the antivirus. Oh, so I have to, for my antivirus, it doesn't come in zip format, which is the standard archive for Windows. But I want to try it, so I'm going to go get one that I love, pkzip.
Sounds sketchy.
Is that extractor what like WinRAR and 7-zip are?
Or sorry, I want 7-zip, not pkzip. I want 7-zip. Yeah, they're archivers, yeah. And they know how to handle .gz files, tar files. Unzip, Windows only knows how to handle standard zip file format. So I have to download 7-zip before I can download and unpack my antivirus. So I have to do this. I have to install 7-zip, and it's a pretty small program. I'm installing to my C drive right now. Next time we'll look at the whole partitioning thing that we skipped over really quickly.
When downloading 7-zip, is it just the same as do we just select the same, just Windows?
Yeah, Windows. I chose Windows 64-bit. Yeah, they're all the same. Now that I have 7-zip, now it knows what to do with this guy. I think. Oh, I have to finish the install. There we go.
I already have 5 viruses.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised. Okay, now let's see if it knows what to do.
I already got ransomware. Come on.
I accidentally shared my bank account with some Nigerian prince.
There, now I can extract. There we go. Now I have extracted my antivirus. So I have to extract it from the tar. I have to do 2 extracts. Oh, cancel. Let's see if I have it. Oh, maybe I chose the wrong ClamAV. I'm going to go back to ClamAV. Did I? Maybe I wasn't paying attention, and it isn't giving me the Windows version. There we go. I chose the wrong version. It was giving me the default Linux version of ClamAV because ClamAV was built for Linux. Now it came as a zip.
How do you think a snapshot works?
Good question. Underneath your menu of your player, manage. Oh, with the virtual workstation 7, you don't get snapshots. Oh, that's right. You don't get snapshots unless you have the Windows Workstation Pro. So on the ESXi or on the Pro version, you can, and this is one great advantage of virtualization, you can basically have Time Machine for every machine. What you have to do without the Pro version, you can basically make backup copies of the folder where your VM lives, and then do differential backups whenever you want to. You have to manually do a snapshot. So ignore the snapshot thing. That would be something you do at this point when I have a good working version. Okay, now I'm going to install the ClamAV. It may not be as nice of an install as I was hoping. Let's see.
Jonah, how did you fix your screen size and all that?
I had to download the tools, and then it
Oh. I don't have an installer. Maybe I downloaded the wrong thing again for the ClamAV.
Where did you go to the tools?
Well, I player, and then manage, and then reinstall Vmware Tools.
What was the question, John?
Yeah, so for, snap, I did the wrong thing. Windows 64 download.
Yeah, and I'm having a problem. It looks like ClamAV is a little more complicated. I prefer just the MSI install. Double click, do the install. Looks like ClamAV is giving me more work than I really wanted to. So ClamAV is not the best choice. I'm realizing, unless I find an install, I do Avast. I'm disappointed with ClamAV. I don't see an installer unless I'm missing something. Oh, maybe I'll read the README. Yeah.
I'll suspend this.
Yeah, you can suspend it at this point. All you have to do then for the homework is manipulate your machine, get used to browsing with Windows, explore the desktop. Think, write down what software would you install to make this machine actually useful.
Okay.
And why would someone still want Windows 7 around? Go ahead, Wayne.
Useful to
Who would it be useful to still? Think of who may be using Windows 7 and why would they not want to move to Windows 10. And some of that's in
my
the
mother.
chapter. Why?
Because some of the programs she has,
Right.
she got
Yep.
that doesn't use that computer with the internet anymore.
Yep. Some software does not have a Windows 10 version of it. Like I think our financial aid people. You're stuck with Windows 7. It costs a lot of money. You've got software that you've tested for years, and Windows 10 is a big change. It's probably likely to break. And the developers are long gone or dead or on to different companies. All right, have a great day and weekend.